capitalize she, and then there's no problem. Very, very easy fix. Now a fragment is a little less common than a run-together sentence for students in your class and language level. But like I mentioned before, every sentence has at least one subject and one verb. If a sentence, and I put a quote around it because fragments are not complete sentences, but if something you wrote that you think is a sentence doesn't have both a subject and a verb, and I make a note with everything a verb needs to make it grammatically correct, meaning if it's a transitive verb, it has an object. If it's an intransitive verb, it doesn't. It is a fragment. For example, I gave him, period. This sentence is a fragment. Why? Because gave or give is a transitive verb. And it's a special type of transitive verb because it has a direct object and it has an indirect object. And give always has that. And so it's one of the aspects of the word give that you just have to memorize. So if we don't complete that object and indirect object, we have a fragment. So the way to fix it, I gave him a ride, period. So one way to check your writing when you see a fragment error is to look up the verbs you use in the sentence, and if they're a transitive verb, ensure that you are writing a direct object or an indirect object also if necessary. That could be one reason you have a fragment. Oftentimes, fragments occur because of subordinating conjunctions. And if you forget what those are, they are words like if, because, since, after, before, until. If you want, you can look up on Google list of subordinating conjunctions and you will have all the subordinating conjunctions in English right away. So if you're not really sure what one is, you can look it up on Google and find out. When you're using a subordinating conjunction, the sentence needs two parts. It needs an independent clause and a dependent clause. So if you're using a word like this, if, because, since, after, you need these two parts to your sentence. So here I said, if a sentence you have written doesn't have both a subject and a verb, this is my example of a fragment. If is one of our subordinating conjunctions. We have if with a subject and a verb, and then a period. We cannot do that because the word if, a subordinating conjunction, makes this a dependent clause. That means it cannot be a sentence on its own. It needs an independent clause with it. So if we have a subordinating conjunction with a subject and a verb, what you need is a comma and then a second subject and a verb. For example, if a sentence you have written doesn't have both a subject and a verb, comma, it is a fragment. So here we have our subordinating conjunction, subject verb, comma, subject verb, period. And this would make your sentence not a fragment. So if you have the symbol fragment above one of your words on the paper, check and see if you're using one of these or one of the other subordinating conjunctions potentially improperly. The next type of error you might have had is a word choice error. Word choice errors are very tricky because it has to do with the definition of the word, it has to do with the connotation of the word, which means what that word means to somebody hearing it or reading it. So it has a lot of cultural and historical feeling behind it. And so a word choice error on your handout means that the word used is not the best word to say what you desire. Another word or another phrase needs to be used to get the proper meaning. And with this error, unfortunately, usually a teacher or a highly educated native speaker might need to help you with this kind of correction. But one thing that you could do is look up the word in the dictionary and look at some of the examples there to ensure that the definition is really what you meant. It could be that the word you're using is too general, is a little too vague, and not specific enough for your situation. But the best way really to deal with a word choice error is to ask a native speaker, especially in a language class, ask your instructor. Usually when I do a word choice error, I might give you a better choice. And so when you're correcting it, you want to talk about why that choice is a better choice. These ones are a little bit less common, so I'm not going to go through them as fast. Sometimes you can have a punctuation error, which means the commas or the semicolons are misplaced or they're not where they should be. A dangling modifier means that the participle is used in the wrong place in a sentence, causing a modifier to modify the wrong item. Okay, very kind of complicated, but the idea is that if you're describing the cat, I need to know you're describing a cat. You're not describing something else. So where you put your adjectives really matters. Where you put your different phrases really matters. Verb completion errors, which means that the verb isn't used as it should as a transitive or intransitive verb. Kind of similar to what we looked at before with give. So, for example, this is a very simple sentence, I want, period. Want is a transitive verb, so we need to have a direct object after we use the word want in English. We can't just say, I want. You need to tell me what you want, because that's what a transitive verb means. You need a direct object. So what do you want? I want the ball. And that's how you would complete the verb and make the error go away. Another error that's pretty common is a subject error, which means that the subject is either not present, it's incomplete, or it's misattributed in the subject-verb agreement in the sentence. Excuse me. If there's no subject in your sentence, what you're saying is a command, not what we would think of as a sentence. So again, in the similar way that the word form error was presented, this one of be, turning it into being. Here, you would want to make sure that the first word of your sentence is not a verb. Most all the time in academic English, we don't start sentences with verbs unless we're commanding somebody. But if you're not commanding someone, which you really, for the most part, shouldn't be in your paper unless it's the conclusion, you need to have a clear, defined subject. Something like this, the I, right? I don't lie. Instead of don't lie. Don't lie sounds like you're telling me not to lie. I don't lie is telling me something about yourself. Last one is a word order error, which means the order of the words or in the phrase or in the sentence is not grammatically correct and needs changing. The order needs changing. And so with this error, just remember that in English, we always have a subject, a verb, and an object. Sometimes what really is your subject starts floating around where the object is. Whatever the focus of your sentence is, whatever person or idea you want your reader to focus on should be your subject, not anything else. And so that might help clear up some of your problems. Sometimes things get a little too complicated and subjects kind of sneak in where they shouldn't be. But remember, in English, we always have our subject first, verb second, and our object third. So hopefully this was a good quick little review of what all of these symbols mean from your error correction sheet, and you got a little more clarity about this assignment for this session and for the sessions to come. If you have any questions still, which you might, remember to come see me before class or in my office hours, and I'm happy to talk grammar with you and to help you out. Okay, guys, thanks for listening. Bye-bye.